Welcome to Roots and Shoots time for today. I'm very glad that you could join me. Let's open in prayer and then we will dive into our next segment in our summer series called Living Waters. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for bringing us all together today. Please help us as we learn more about your word and connect with you through nature and through all the things that you created for us. Please help us to be able to see living streams of water in our own lives that are blessings and grace from you. Help us to have an open heart and an open mind as we learn about your story today. In Jesus' name, amen. So, we have been making connections between water and God's story this summer. And I'm very happy to be able to share this third segment with you. And today we are going to be learning about something that is actually one of the most, I think, beautiful parts of Under the Waves. So, just close your eyes for a minute and imagine that you are putting on a snorkeling mask and some flippers and you're going to be swimming around in warm sea water. Everything is blue, it's all warm, it's beautiful. There's fish of many shapes and colors swimming by you, and you can see all different kinds of plants and little animals, and there's lots of color. And where do you think you are? You may know you are exploring a neighborhood community called a coral reef. 25% of all marine life in the oceans live in coral reefs, and they depend on each other for survival. So they're full of fish and octopus and eels and little turtles and all sorts of different creatures that may be big, may be small, and they all live together there. Coral reefs can also act as a nursery of sorts because lots of different underwater creatures depend on them as a safe place to deposit their eggs and have a higher chance of survival. But what is a coral reef? So a coral reef is actually made up of lots of, by lots I mean like thousands of tiny little creatures called coral polyps. And some polyps are hard and some are soft, and some move kind of like fans and some don't move at all. But yeah, so these thousands of tiny little creatures all bundle together, and they all live together in one small area. And it's kind of like trying to share your room with like 1,000 brothers and sisters. That may sound horrible to you, but for the coral polyps, this is how they have to live. They need to bond together in order to survive and to thrive. So among all those coral polyps are also little creatures, they're plant-like things that are called algae. So these coral polyps and the algae grow together and they protect each other, and they're very happy with this situation. And they create the structures that we know as coral reefs. So coral tends to grow in warm tropical areas, does not like the cold, and kind of usually close to the surface, probably because it doesn't like the cold and the sun reaches down. Coral reefs are often found in areas where there are waves. And if you think about it, waves would be bringing in fresh food and fresh oxygen from deeper out in the water, lots of nutrients coming in. So that helps to support the plants and animals that live in the reef. So there's a few different kinds of coral reefs. Give you a quick overview of the most common ones. I guess you could say the third most common, the one that it's very distinctive, and it's often out in like pretty isolated. This is not something that's often very close to land. It's called an atoll reef. It's ring-shaped, and it circles an island or an underwater volcano area. So these are often hidden by the waves. The waves are often stronger here. And actually, atoll reefs have been the cause of shipwrecks for like hundreds of years, which is kind of interesting. So they tend to be more rocky and sandy because of all the friction and the corrosion that's happening, more so than with other types of reefs. And that kind of causes, I guess that causes them to break down a little bit faster. And also, of course, if there is a volcano down there, they're going to have a different base, and there'll be volcanic rock in there too. So it just breaks down differently. So another kind of common area of reef is called a barrier reef. So a barrier reef thrives in areas that are just off the shore, out in the deeper water. So you'd have like the beach or the shore, and then open water, and then the barrier reef. Kind of, I guess you could say kind of like a fence around your yard, but in a basically a row shape, not like in a circle, or your fence might be a square or a rectangle around your property. So the largest barrier reef in the world is called the Great Barrier Reef, and it's one of the largest living structures in Earth. It is so big that you can see it from space. So huge. And it's just off the coast of Queensland, Australia, so a very warm place. And it's made up of approximately 3,000 coral reefs that have actually grown together to form. I mean, I guess it does become kind of like a fence then in that case, right? Because it's like the posts have grown, they're together. So barrier reefs are really important because they create a protected area. So remember I said there's the barrier reef, there's the shore or beach, and then we have this area here of protected open water. So it's very warm there, it's very still because the waves are stopped by the reef, or at least broken down into smaller things. So this is actually a really valuable area for a lot of creatures, a lot of rare ocean plants and fish depend on these areas because they're safe, they're calm, they're warm. It's a perfect place to live. Lots of really cool tropical fish that can't survive in other places live in these open spaces. So the most common by far type of coral reef is called a fringing reef. So the barrier reef is like a fence. There's your house, like the shore. There's your barrier reef. There's the open area. But a fringe reef is the opposite. So you have the shore, you have the open water, and then here along the shore, you have your reef. So it's fringing the shore or the beach line. So it's kind of like it's forming a border around the beach and any surrounding islands too. So if you want to go into the deeper water, you would have to go across the barrier reef. Just like if you're at Wild Goose out to go for a swim, you have to step over those rocks in order to get out to swim. So it's just kind of the same idea. So the largest of these type of reefs, again, is just off of the coast of Australia. But actually today, we are not going to talk about the biggest fringe reef. We're going to talk about the second biggest fringe reef. So the second biggest fringe reef in the world is the Red Sea coral reef. The Red Sea got its name because of an algae that sometimes grows in the water, and normally the water is very clear, very bluish green, just like typical ocean sea water. But then when this algae is thriving, it actually turns like a reddish brownish color, hence the name Red Sea. So this is one of the saltiest bodies of water in the entire world, and that's partly because there are no rivers on either side of this sea feeding into it, because that would feed in fresh water, fresh rainwater, and it would dilute all that salt, right? That doesn't happen, so it just stays super salty. It's also partly due to the high temperature in the land around this area. We're talking like near Africa, that area. So pretty hot, so that causes a lot of evaporation. So instead of being diluted by the rivers coming in, because there are none and it's hot, it's actually getting concentrated. Think about when you have a pot of broth and you boil it down and it gets stronger and stronger tasting. So yeah, very, very salty. So that's part of why it's a kind of a unique, we've got the red algae, we've got the salt content. It's also kind of interesting, maybe because of those two factors, I'm not sure. But there have been a lot of researchers looking into the effects of climate change on coral reefs in the last couple of years, like in the last many years, but especially in the last couple of years, as these effects seem to be becoming more prevalent. And this coral reef, the Red Sea coral reef, seems to have something about it that makes it more resistant to climate change than any of the other coral reefs. So there is still some damage due to climate change, but not as much as you would expect. And they don't know why. So there's going to be more research coming out about that because people are very interested in this. Maybe it can help us. The Red Sea is very long and very narrow. On one side lies Saudi Arabia and Yemen. On the other side lies Egypt, Sudan, and Eritrea, these are northern Africa places. So yeah, we're talking very hot. And the Red Sea is not very deep. It's got a couple deep-ish places, but in a lot of places it might be only like 6-10 feet deep. So not like a super deep sea. It's still a major transportation channel in that area, but they have to kind of weave around to find the good spots. So not very helpful for people who are trying to bring goods in and out, but very helpful if you are trying to part the seas and lead a group of people through the waters, just like Moses did. This is the sea that in Exodus, we have the stories about Moses and his brother Aaron leading God's people away from Egypt into their new land and where they would find freedom. So, God's people were being forced to work as slaves, right? They were in Egypt. They were not being treated well. And God sent Moses, who knew that this was wrong, to help God, to be a voice, because God wanted to lead them into a better life. The people just had to trust in Moses and trust in God and to have faith. So yeah, God sent Moses and his brother Aaron to go talk to the leader of Egypt, who was called the Pharaoh, to ask for the Israelites' freedom. And of course, he said no. Their economy depended on this. Their buildings, the pyramids that they were building, all these other monuments, they were not about to let thousands of slaves go free, unfortunately, for the Israelites, but also for the Egyptians, because God sent 10 plagues, one at a time. Every time Moses went and asked Pharaoh, let my people go. And every time, basically, Pharaoh refused. So finally, after the 10th plague, Pharaoh was like, all right, enough. This is it. This is horrible. We're done here. Vamonos. Out you go. So the Israelites packed up really quick and they were ready to go free. And Moses is leading them out of town and they're excited and they're happy and they're getting close to the Red Sea where they're going to start their new life. And then they can hear that the Egyptians are behind them. The Pharaoh has changed his mind and has said, no, vamonos, come back and you are going to be slaves again. So they're chasing these people. So they're at the coast of the Red Sea and the people are starting to forget a little bit. And Moses says, whoa, God did not lead you this far and help you to escape slavery just to abandon you now. So believe, have faith. Let's step forward together. And he prays and God comes to him and he, in Exodus 14, verses 21 and 22, it tells us that when Moses reached out his hand over the sea, all that night, the Lord drove the sea back with the strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground with a wall of water on their right and on their left. Whew! Passing through the waters, and they look up, and there's maybe 6, maybe 10 feet of water built up on either side. I wonder if they could see like fish or anything like that. That would be amazing. So anyway, they passed through the sea safely, and it took them all night. So it probably took them we're talking between 6 and 8 hours of walking. Of course, they had children, they had elders, they had, I think, some animals with them, probably some carts carrying their belongings. So yeah, they're carefully, methodically going through this water. And of course, the Egyptians are still following them. So once they were on the other side, God released the water, and the waters of the Red Sea, that pathway closed up again, and the Egyptians were not able to recapture God's people into slavery. They made their way into freedom. And I mean, their challenges weren't over yet. If you've read Exodus or know any of those stories, you know that Moses was not quite done leading these people through some challenges. But I think they, at this point anyway, they were encouraged in their faith. So we're going to think about something here. When you go to sit down on a chair, maybe you're there for dinner, you pull out your chair a little bit and you go to sit down. You expect that the chair will be there when you sit down. And if it's not, if someone has yanked it out from under you, that's a horrible surprise and an awful feeling. Okay, so think about something else here. When you're blindfolded and your friend is leading you, you trust that they are going to lead you safely, that they are taking you maybe into a room for a surprise party, or that they're taking you through an obstacle course as a trust exercise. You trust that they're going to make sure that you don't fall, that you're safe, you're not going to hurt yourself. You know they're not going to lead you into traffic, right? They want what's best for you here, whatever the end game is. They're not going to try to hurt you on purpose and let you down. So this is basically what having faith means. Having faith means that you have confidence that what is happening is going to be a good thing for you, whether it's sitting in your chair and being able to enjoy your dinner, or being blindfolded and led into a surprise party or through an obstacle course or something like that without getting hurt or lost or something. And you might get hurt or lost, but that's not the point of having faith. So when you have faith in God, it's kind of the same idea. Bad things might still happen, challenges might still happen, but you still have that hope that even though you maybe can't see where God is in all of it, that He is there, and that even if things aren't going like the best for you, that you're not alone in that, and that God is working even if you can't see how. So faith means relaxing in the belief that God does love you and God does want good things for you. It doesn't mean you're never afraid. It doesn't mean that you're never worried about what's happening, but it means that you can give that fear and that worry to God and take comfort in the fact that He's guiding you and He is with you. So having faith means that you are relying on God's character and trusting that you are not alone. So faith can be a very tricky thing and a very individual thing. And sometimes in your life, you might find that it's stronger than at other times. So how can you help your faith to grow? And what does it mean when I say relying on God's character? Since a very big part of having faith is knowing God's character and knowing that He is there for you, it's important to build your faith by drawing close to God and getting to know Him better, like a father or like a friend. And this means reading the Bible. It means spending time in prayer, both alone and with other people. It means opening up your heart during worship time. It means learning about the ways of God's Son, Jesus, and trying to treat other people like Jesus did. And having faith means acting on those things and not just sitting there thinking about it necessarily. It means that when you get a chance, you do a good thing with a loving heart, and you let other people kind of see how you shine inside because you have faith. So I really encourage you to lean into this and see what having faith means for you, because it is an individual thing, and I can't really tell you how to have faith. It's like something that you kind of have to lean into and figure out for yourself. But it's worth it. It's a good journey to be on. And it might be a journey that takes your whole life, and that is totally okay. So I would love to hear about you and how your faith is growing, or how you are trying to lean into your faith this week. Please feel free to post in our Grassroots Facebook page and let us know how you're doing. And I do hope you are doing well. I hope you're enjoying the sunshine. And remember that we can get together again as a large group gathering next week on July 18th. And there will be details posted on social media and in the newsletter soon. So look forward to hopefully seeing you then. And we'll be doing videos this summer for people who are not quite there yet, where they can come in to meet us in person. That's totally fine. So hang in there this week. I love you. I miss you. And I hope that this week you feel seen and you feel loved and you feel cared for. And I hope that you join us next week as we learn about another part of water in God's story and how it helps us to learn about God.